Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's May 1st. Happy May, everybody. May Day. Everywhere but the United States, we are reminded every May Day by the Howard Zinn Project. But okay, it's May 1st. How's it going so far? Pretty good? President terrible? All right, check. We got all the boxes checked. It is Wednesday, May 1st, 2019. Time for yet another show. Still looks like I wonder if I've punched a button somewhere on Greg's feed here. So everything seems to be working fine with the audio. It's just apparently impossible to get things to work on the messaging. I don't know. Maybe he hasn't sent anything yet, but I doubt it. Usually he's sent these things by now. I wonder if there's a button I press somewhere that mutes him in chat somehow. All right. Well, we'll work around it, no doubt. And all my messages working from Justice Putnam. Everything seems to be going just fine, and we'll catch up on all the nonsense happening today. Lots to talk about, of course. Both Greg and Joan McCarter do here today. Daily Co's Radio is live now, Bill reminds us, in Portland. Let's see, what's he got on tap for us today? I might as well find out what the hell I'm doing in the show today. Robert Mueller sent Bill Barr a stern letter that could lead to his impeachment, and all Kagro X, me, David Waldman, and guests Greg Dworkin, Dem from Connecticut, and Joan McCarter, easy enough on Twitter. All we got was this lousy t-shirt for all three of them. So unfair. Yeah, it's true. And I don't even know how we're going to fit in that t-shirt together at the same time, but be a lot of fun, I suppose. Okay, well, you know, it's like a big game of Twister. Look, I think I've got a image sent from Greg. So the messaging system is working again. We got it unclogged. I put a Roto-Rooter in there earlier this morning, and I thought that might unclog things, and I guess that's really all it takes. Just have a plunger handy. All right. Well, plenty of work to catch up on. Let's see. Many things happening. The talk of Twitter, of course. Yesterday's report that, I guess depending on which news channel you watch and which person you believe when they tweet about the news, if you're Donald Trump, or well, as it happens, Glenn Greenwald, everything's peachy. It's just fine. Mueller didn't say anything bad about Barr. He just said the press coverage was lousy. If you read things differently, you might have come away with the understanding that Robert Mueller was apparently telling somebody somewhere in a way that sounds like a leak that he was unhappy with the characterization that Barr gave Mueller's report, which should surprise no one, really. And, well, we'll parse the messaging at some point today. Other things happening that captured my attention. Just this morning. Wasn't planning on this one, but, you know, ProPublica loves to surprise you every day with something outrageous. And today's version is a headline that reads, How Taxpayers Covered a $1,000 liquor bill for Trump staffers and more at Trump's club, which is essentially a news report that says all the things that we've been saying for years now about emoluments are absolutely true. I guess this is reopening the door on the domestic emoluments front as opposed to the foreign emoluments. Story here promotes itself with a subheader that says a top shelf closed door drinking session. And remember, Trump doesn't drink. Wouldn't make much difference if he did. It'd be probably worse. $546 a night hotel rooms, a special government credit card for Mar-a-Lago. Taxpayers foot the costs and the president profits. Do we dare dive into this? I'll give you a taste of it. And then, of course, whenever we're ready, we'll switch on over to Greg's Roundup. But this seems like fun. Fits into their vertical that they call Trump Incorporated. And easy enough to see how. Here's Greg now, as a matter of fact. He wants part of this free booze thing, I think, down at Mar-a-Lago. Good morning, Greg. It's not drinking time yet, but...
no, it's still a little early.
Yeah, I do have mead. There's still a little left. I checked.
Right. can you see the messages on Skype? I could see yours.
No.
You can't see mine.
So you can see mine, although I did see that you sent. Oh, no, I saw that you sent
I
them
took
on
a
Twitter.
screenshot and sent it to you on that Twitter back channel. So that's what we used this morning.
Guessing I must have punched a button somewhere that says
I'm
Greg's
pretty
not
sure
allowed
it's
to send me messages, but what button is that?
I don't know.
Okay.
So, to me, there were two big stories yesterday, but we got some interesting ones as well. Do you want to do the interesting little ones, or do you want to get to the big stuff?
Interesting little ones.
Interesting little ones. All right. Well, in this particular case, we have something from The Nation, which caught my eye because I've said it often.
This Nation.
The president is not the front runner. In normal election cycles, incumbent presidents are favored to win, but 2020 is no normal election cycle. Of course, he's no normal president. We can tell that from his retweeting 50 some odd times.
Oh, yes.
Firefighters love me. He was doing that this morning. And, of course, the funniest one is a mock account, F Donald Trump, which uses the full F word, and Donald Trump was more than happy to retweet.
Yes.
Because it says, my husband is a firefighter and is with you all the way, but the avatar, the picture that goes with that account is Bernie 2020. But that wasn't subtle enough. So they actually changed the picture, and now it's a picture of a naked Donald Trump, and Trump is retweeting it, and that's why it's so funny.
He's so funny. Yeah, it's good. I guess he doesn't.
He doesn't read, obviously. They said something good about me. I'm not going into this any further.
So yeah,
and that superficiality is basically
pictures.
a microcosm of his entire presidency.
I guess so. I mean, that shouldn't surprise us. He's willing to. He praises well-known dictators because they say something nice about him. Why not a local jerk?
Right. Anyway, this Nation article says most people in this country do not support Donald Trump and never have.
Oh, good. I don't.
That's a good thing. Mm-hmm. As the New York Times recently reported, he's the only president in the history of Gallup polling never to earn the support of a majority of Americans, even for a single day of his term.
All right. I like
this
that.
simple fact should be the starting point for all analysis of the 2020 presidential election, but rather than stating it at the outset, most pundits and columnists ignore a crucial reality. In doing so, they distort their coverage and default to Trump. I almost hesitate to point this out because we need to sustain a strong sense of urgency in order to win back the White House, but it's important to allocate time, energy, and resources in the most informed and effective fashion, which is, of course, why we have our show, David. What we think has to happen in order to win in 2020 will drive our efforts in 2019, so we need to have this discussion now, mathematically and empirically. As we enter this election cycle, Donald Trump is not favored to win election. The president is not the front runner. Now, that doesn't mean he can't win. That's something completely different. But, it's important to point that out. And, of course, that's why it's so important also to point out that he has this a ceiling as well as a floor. He doesn't get below 37. He doesn't get above 44.
Yeah, well, he remains in this cage. But what can we do to get rid of
he likes cages,
the floor?
He uses them for
I think
babies
they put a
too.
trap door in this floor. If we could,
right. The other interesting little short piece I thought was fascinating that caught my eye this morning is from Michael McDonald, the election expert, election guru, Elect Project, expert. It's called. This could have implications for Republican gerrymanders in many states. Gerrymandering challengers, this is in North Carolina, handed 75,000 files from computer of a dead redistricting guru by his estranged daughter. And the story is in the Charlotte News Observer. And let me just double check on Twitter and make sure that you have Michael McDonald's tweet and the link there to the News Observer.
McDonald's. Yes.
Okay, so what happened is Stephanie Hofeller turned over 4 hard drives and 18 thumb drives of files earlier this year to Attorneys for Common Cause, the North Carolina Democratic Party, and 37 North Carolina voters after her father's estate said it had no information about the case.
Well, the estate, who knows where. Okay, interesting.
The files are in the hands of a third-party vendor to maintain their integrity.
Good.
The late father, was named Thomas Hofeller, and he first drew redistricting lines for state legislative districts in 2011 after Republicans took control of the General Assembly. Those lines were overturned as unconstitutional. Hofeller drew another set that are again being challenged. He died in August. Common Cause and the Democratic Party filed their lawsuit in November. The challengers planned to share most of the files with the attorneys for the Republican lawmakers who are being sued. The files are being discussed because Jones reported about 1,000 of them appear to include personal information, such as medical and tax records that have nothing to do with the case, and attorneys for the defendants, that's the Republicans, wanted to see those as well. Jones asked the three-judge panel to decide whether those should also be shared. But Republicans were concerned about what could be in the documents that don't exist because they don't have any information.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Well, nothing. They don't exist.
Dr. Hofeller was estranged from his daughter, so we have a very serious concern about how she came into possession of these files. The hearing was held in Wake County Superior Court with several lawyers and judges participating by phone. He said the files likely contain attorney-client privileged information on Hofeller's redistricting work in other states over many years. Now, the discussion didn't get into specifics about what the files may show, but he's worked on behalf of Republicans as far back as the 80s, using his computer mapping skills as the chief map maker for the National Party. And Jones contended that Strzok and other defense attorneys should have objected when Jones subpoenaed the files from Stephanie Hofeller. The panel did not make an immediate decision on the files, and the case is slated to go to trial on July 15th. So that would be kind of interesting if it turns out that there's a national plan to screw Democrats. And here's the data. Here's the smoking gun. But you can't see it because one of the files has information about the fact that I have psoriasis.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't think that stopped anybody else. I guess all you got to do is ask the Russians for it, and then
truth is, we don't know what's in the files, but it'd be very interesting if the files contain stuff like, oh, this is Plan 1, it didn't quite work because I don't screw enough Democrats. Let me do Plan 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's not out of the question. North Carolina has already had evidence entered into the record on its gerrymandering and the courts have already ruled about it being the gerrymandering having been done with surgical precision.
Well, that particular note in one of those thumb drives that say, I like this final version. It screws plaques tremendously more than my other ones.
Yes.
That kind of thing would not necessarily be something that their side would want to come out in open court. I don't know what's in it.
I don't know. It might be something they would chant at a march.
Yeah.
So who knows? I don't think it should be privileged. And also, again, we should pick another country that we'd like to visit and ask if they're listening. Maybe their intelligence services could find these emails.
Right. Now, I'm not a lawyer, of course, and so I just don't think like a lawyer. And I guess I just don't understand how the idea is that if you do something illegal or immoral, horrible, deliberately
the worst,
anti-democratic. But hey, I mentioned it to my lawyer, therefore attorney-client privilege, you're not allowed to see it.
The reason that works is it does not work.
I saw that with Michael Cohen.
Right. That's not a thing.
He's a lawyer. I talked about it with him. Why can't I call lawyer-client privilege? Well,
you can.
3 out of that
just won't work.
70 million things was, but the others weren't.
Yeah. It doesn't work that way, but it does create a lot of delays and opportunities for obfuscation, and gives you a chance, I guess, to charter a private jet and run to Argentina. Which, if you're listening,
as Michael McDonald added to the story, it might be ho-hum for the Supreme Court if there's evidence of partisan gerrymandering by Republicans. I mean, everybody kind of already knows that.
Yes.
It would be much more damaging legally and politically if it turns out there's evidence of intentional racial gerrymandering.
There is.
And that's why those files are so interesting.
Yeah. It's amazing that they made files.
If you do your mapping on computer, you're going to have files to be able to do that.
Right. Yeah, but notes like, boy, do I hate black people is bad.
Yeah.
I mean, just you shouldn't make such files, not just because you might get caught, but because that's not nice. You should not be doing that. Yeah. You should be arrested.
I don't know what to say. Stephen Moore makes jokes and cartoons like that all the time, and he doesn't think too much of it.
He's going to be in the Fed, so it's totally different.
I think his excuse was, hey, it's okay because I thought it was funny.
I do this all the time.
I do this
People
all
don't
the time.
understand. Yeah, he's and
I mean, if it wasn't
he's
funny, I
killing
can
it,
understand
too.
why you would get mad, but it's funny, you know. So hey,
Right.
give me a break.
It's practically Saturday Night Live. Yeah, he's awful, and I wonder where does he hang out? Well, I don't know his background. I don't know what he's been doing when he's not been nominated for the Fed, other than make bad jokes. But where do you go for this sort of thing? I don't know.
All right, let's tackle one of the two big stories, and that's the announcement and bump that Joe Biden gets for jumping into the race.
Hey, I'm in. All right.
He gets his announcement bump. Remember, I wrote this morning on the Pundit Roundup, it's a bump because it may not last. And Elizabeth Warren's policy tour is having an effect. She's actually second in the Quinnipiac poll. 3 big polls came out yesterday. Okay. Meanwhile, Newt Gingrich says he expects Kamala Harris to win in the end because she's a new generation. And he says Pete Buttigieg is the most dangerous to Trump in terms of being Midwestern and white and male.
Karate.
And he doesn't think Biden is going to go anywhere.
Okay.
So there's Newt Gingrich for you. So that tells me they're really worried about Biden.
I guess so. Yes.
And who do Democrats really want? We don't know.
Right. Don't ask.
But aside from Uncle Joe, Elizabeth Warren had the best week, and Beto probably the worst week in the polls. Beto dropped as much as 7 points in some of them from the last poll to this. But Harry Enton, who covers CNN, is working for CNN, covers CNN, says you might think that a 76-year-old white man is the wrong person for a movement or a moment when the Democratic Party is becoming more diverse. The poll indicates that people of color, at least for the moment, disagree with that assessment. Biden scores 50% with non-white voters in CNN's poll, and that compares with the 29% he gets with white voters.
Well, I'm glad we asked.
This poll matches with prior polls suggest minorities are a large part of Joe Biden's base, which also suggests that it's not part of Bernie's base. Sam Stein points the Q poll has Biden surging too at 38%. Bigger finding is Warren up to second with 12, Bernie 11. Steve Kornacki notes the actual numbers. Biden 38, Warren 12, Sanders 11, Buttigieg 10, Harris 8, O'Rourke 5, Booker 2. That's a big drop for O'Rourke.
Yeah.
And in the Quinnipiac poll, Ron Brownstein notes, even more emphatic, 64% of Democrats greater than 50 in the Quinnipiac poll say Biden has the best chance of beating Trump, no one else in double digits, and 48% of less than 50-year-olds pick Biden as the best choice. That could change based on his performance, but older Democrats start with a strong lean on that question.
Okay. They love pocket squares.
Right. Let's see what else we have. Biden voters are actually 17 points more likely to say they know about his record than those who are choosing other candidates. That is, there's not much of a sign right now that people will change their mind on him once they learn more.
I see.
And therefore attacking him on his record, may not be the way to go. And the final point Harry Enton makes, I wrote a few weeks ago, how the Democratic electorate is older, more moderate, and less educated than you think. That's on full display in the CNN poll, and what I call the hidden Democratic Party is powering Biden's big advantage. The activists are very much online. Older people, not so much.
Very online. Extremely online. Yes.
Okay. Steve Kornacki points out in the Morning Consult poll, so we have CNN, Quinnipiac, and Morning Consult, Biden's at 36, up 6 points. Sanders at 22, minus 2. Warren 9, plus 2. Buttigieg 8, minus 1. Harris 7, minus 1. O'Rourke 5, minus 1. The other two polls have O'Rourke falling 7 points. Booker 3, minus 1. Klobuchar 2. And Yang at 2.
Yang hanging in there.
Right. Dave Weigel adds, to understand Biden mentum, you got to have some of the conversations I had yesterday. Middle-aged women explaining that 2016 showed that voters won't elect a female president, so they got to be strategic. Now, that's not the end conversation on that, but that is out there.
People do say it.
People think that. Not all people think that. I can find 3 people that think that. But, for other candidates, they're going to have to deal with that, fix it, change it. Change perception.
Yeah.
What we do know, I wrote in the Pundit Roundup, is we want someone who agrees with us, who can win, who attracts independents, and who fires up the base, right? Also, please lower taxes and increase services.
Yeah. And free pizza.
Yeah, please. Now, 47% of Democrats in the ABC Washington Post poll think the party should nominate somebody who's closest to them in the issues, and 39% want someone who seems most likely to defeat President Trump. Other polls have the opposite. So there's still not total agreement with that. But 44% want people who will win over independents, and 48% want people who will energize the base. I mean, all of that is on display. Do we get borderline Trump voters or those who decided not to vote in the last minute because they didn't like either candidate? Is that who we go after? Or do we energize our base? And the answer to that is always yes.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, both. I mean, there's no reason to choose one over the other.
Right. I will take both if offered the opportunity.
Anyway, we read yesterday, or Monday, I guess it was, the Julia Pulver piece, which I added to the Pundit Roundup. And Emily Sugarman had a nice piece in the Daily Beast. Bizarre, dangerous, and insulting. Baby nurses fed up with Trump's bogus abortion rants. So medical professionals are becoming outraged at that.
Yes, as well they should.
So that's the basic politics of how things are going right now. Some people are having relatively good weeks, and Uncle Joe's one of them.
Yes.
Joe Biden. Some people are having relatively bad political weeks. William Barr is one of them.
Yes.
And some people are kind of stuck in neutral. And that's a lot of the Democratic candidates. Sure, there's 20 of them, but there's really only about 8 major candidates. And, it's incredibly early and nothing's decided. And the fact that Biden has a fairly strong lead at this point means only one thing. At this moment, he's the front runner. It is not predictive in any way, shape, or form. There are plenty of people who at this stage led, Joe Lieberman in 2004, that kind of thing. But it doesn't matter.
Did we, and speaking of Joe Lieberman, is that why Joe Mentum is retired? Why Biden has to be Biden Mentum?
Well, the Lieberman thing comes up a lot because, like, if you're at 10%, in a 3-way tie for 5th,
okay, right,
and you're going to say, look, I'm not in 5th place. I'm in a 3-way tie for 3rd.
Well, right, T3, as they put it on the golf scores. Okay. I mean, I feel like, I know he's joking, calling it Biden Mentum, but it feels like there should be.
He had a good week. I mean, there's just no question about it. You can dislike Biden. You can think it's not his time. You could think that you need somebody else or want somebody else or have a preferred candidate. But there's no question he's had a big week. And, he's currently doing some interesting things. And this is unfair. But it is what it is. If he says something about, for example, impeachment, it just gets covered differently than if the other candidates say the same thing.
Yes.
He had a comment the other day. Biden says that if Trump blocks House investigations, Democrats have no alternative but to impeach. If that's a standard, not sure how this doesn't wind up in impeachment, says Aaron Blake. Right. Depends on how you define block, but Trump is certainly blocking significant aspects. So does that mean Biden is for impeachment? Does that change how people view of him? This is all part of the moving parts. And the fact that Biden says this throws this out into the wider world for discussion. Now, there's plenty of polling out there saying that impeachment is trailing don't impeach by significant margins. Impeachment's 37-40%, and don't impeach is upwards of 50-55%. But it's still early in the process, just like it's early in the Democratic nominating process. And Nixon started at 19 and then grew after hearings. So
where did it go to eventually?
Nixon? The majority of people thought he should step down.
By about how much?
It was 50, 55%. I can go track that down.
I'd be interested to see, just because, having impeachment in the 40s is tremendous.
Yeah, especially if you're starting.
Yeah, right.
With your own propaganda network telling you you should.
I don't think we say that.
That's actually
enough.
A pretty high number.
Yeah, impeachment, on the question of impeaching a current president, I don't know that it goes higher than the teens ordinarily. or ever, except for when you have had a series of hearings, I guess, as we found out with Nixon. But I don't know. I'm not sure what people said about the Clinton impeachment, whether it was, I mean, it was unpopular. I know that, but I don't know how low it actually went. But having impeached just out of the blue without any hearings started that are explicit about the end game, starting
without
in the 40s,
Senator Sam
crazy.
Ervin, without that sort of thing.
So I don't know. It's not likely to become anything overwhelming in terms of political public sentiment. People don't like that process very much.
Okay,
but it's never going to be 70, 80%.
Let's see, this would be 1973,
yeah.
June of 1973.
What a time.
Nixon started out with
Yes.
19% thinking he should be removed from office.
Yes, okay.
All right. And then by the time the process was done and everybody had decided where we're at on this, this was August of 1974. Public sentiment had grown to 57% after Supreme Court rules that Nixon must hand over the tapes.
Okay. So 50 even ends.
At the time he resigned his presidency,
Yes.
24% approved of the job Richard Nixon is doing as president,
Okay.
and 57% thought he should be removed from office. Now, Trump, I said, has a floor of 37. How low can it go? It can go to 24. It's never going to go below
guess
24,
so.
25. That's the absolute floor. 25% of the Republican Party will support you no matter what you do.
Yes, that's probably always going to be the case, and it's good to remind everybody of that. But even so, Richard Nixon, previously the most impeachable guy ever, still 57%. I mean, for a national question, that's still pretty huge. But if you're looking for this thing to go into the 60s before people say, "Oh, okay, I get your message," that's not going to happen.
Right.
We'll be right back. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, with a brand new interruption to say thanks to all of you who support the show. Remember when I told you that our average monthly donation was about $7, for which you were getting 2 great hours of news and entertainment 5 days a week, and how that came out to about 70 cents an hour? That's a pretty good deal. Except it's wrong. The math actually works out closer to 17 cents an hour. It is hard to beat a deal like that, and even harder to send your kids to college on. Thankfully, Patreon.com makes it easy to make that work. Patreon, Patreon.com, is the simple, secure way to make recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Just search for me or the show name on the site, and they make it easy to crowdfund the show so that the power of our numbers can keep the show going for just a few bucks a month. Once again, thanks so much for all your support. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Still working on banging on the pipes with wrenches here at Skype Central. Trying to figure things out here. So I have open for later one of those FAQ databases where you stick the problem that you're having into Google and say, what the hell is going on here? And I'll see if any of these, there must be a switch somewhere, because all the messages work from other people. You're getting my messages. All right, well, we'll figure it out, or make it a topic of conversation for an hour. One way or another, it's going to work out to our advantage. We'll either fill show with it or get the messages.
Huh.
Okay.
Okay. Well, anyway.
I don't know.
So one of the things we were talking about is Richard Nixon.
That guy.
And another file I found from Brookings points out, comparing Trump with Nixon, that Nixon at the time, in his second term, when you compare to the beginning of Trump's first term, so you're comparing Nixon's second term to Trump's first term, Nixon had like a 65, 66% or more approval compared to Trump never breaking 50.
Okay, right. So,
and at the time that the Senate Watergate Committee begins hearings in May of 1973, Nixon is more popular than Trump still in the mid-40s compared to Trump. And, of course, Nixon may have ended at 24. But the point I'm making is that at the beginning of Nixon's second term, Nixon's way more popular than Trump, and people don't want to see him removed from office, and he still ends up the way he ends up.
Yeah.
So Trump is starting off in a worse position. He's less popular than Nixon, and the sentiment to remove him is already double what it was for Nixon at the start, and we haven't had hearings yet.
Right. So I think that's a fine way of pointing that out for people. And
of course, David and I were also talking about one of the major differences between Nixon and Trump.
Yes.
Is Nixon is dead and Trump isn't. So Trump is horrible, but Nixon was horrible. So you have to make that important distinction.
Right. True enough. And, the time will come eventually when they're both equally terrible in the past tense. And, maybe that'll happen before he's impeached. I don't know. Don't know what the plan is. We'll see. But I wouldn't mind being spared the work. Anyway, I'll just let him know that if I can fit it in between his retweets this morning. I do understand.
Well, it depends on the weather, right? Because if it's raining, maybe he won't be golfing.
Right. And there is some chance in the evening that may happen.
Right. And one last thing to finish up. This is an average of the CNN and Quinnipiac polls on the candidates that Harry Anton put together. And if you look at very liberal, Biden 23, Sanders 22, Warren 19, Pete Buttigieg 12, Kamala Harris 11, Beto O'Rourke 2. I'm telling you, Beto's fading. If you look at somewhat liberal, Biden 38, Sanders 12, Warren 10, Buttigieg 12, Kamala Harris 7, Beto O'Rourke 4. And if you look at moderate conservative, Joe Biden 44, Sanders 9, Elizabeth Warren 7, Buttigieg 6, Kamala Harris 4, Beto O'Rourke 8. So somewhat liberal, 38-12 for Biden over Sanders. Moderate conservative, 44-9, Biden over Sanders, Sanders in second place. And very liberal, which I think is the most interesting of the group, although it may be the smallest, Joe Biden 23%, Sanders 22%, Warren 19%. Now, they don't break out the percentages of each group. What we do know is that liberals are half the party and moderate conservatives are half the party. We know that from Gallup. So Biden overwhelmingly leads with moderate conservatives, and he does okay with liberals.
All right.
So, again, our own individual ideology, our own individual choices, what we see on Daily Kos, what we see on social media. Harry Anton's right. There's a larger Democratic Party. He's not online. And right now, they're with Biden, including people of color and especially women of color.
Yeah, and that's important. And we tend to, and it's,
they vote.
We make a lot of assumptions about where they'll go based on, I guess, our idea of their identity politics. And guess what? When they are allowed to declare their own identity, they go elsewhere sometimes.
Yeah. And, because they're smart. They say, look, you all suck. We don't trust any of you. We're making this decision based on what we think is best.
Yeah. I mean, it's as clear a message of, I just want out of this insane situation we're in. Could I, might I have an ideal candidate elsewhere? Maybe, but I don't want to talk about that. I want out of this. I think this will work best. I just want to start, climbing the ladder out of this hole.
Right.
So.
I keep going back to that Chicago yearly Kos it was at that time. It wasn't Netroots Nation yet. You and I were there.
Yes.
And there was this convention of liberals and very liberals who, not all of whom were Democrats. And that was the year that the presidential campaign with Obama and Clinton and Mike Gravel, who loved trucks, big trucks, were all there. And they had this great debate, which we got a chance to see live. Mm-hmm. And you will recall there was also another convention. I think it was Black Shriners, but it was African American group who was also meeting in the same convention center.
Yes.
And we shared elevator space. We shared bar space. in
Right.
the evenings,
Hats.
and in the mornings, if that was
Tiny
your preference.
cars.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, they had very cool uniforms and hats. I remember that.
Yes.
But it was inevitable that the two groups would sit and chat and share a beer and, chat about politics and stuff like that. And I recall being asked about who my preference was.
Mm.
And at that time, I didn't have one, but I said, I really kind of like this Obama guy.
Yeah.
And one of the African Americans in the other group said, well, I hope you don't think we're going to vote for him just because he's black. And I hope you don't vote for him just because he's black. That's really got nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
It's got a lot to do with, who's good for us.
Yes.
And I said, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not making any assumptions whatsoever about where your vote is going. Your vote is your own.
Yeah.
And I haven't even decided mine yet. But it was a really interesting conversation and just a reminder that you can't make assumptions about how people are going to vote unless you're going to do something like, for example, poll them.
Yes, that's one.
And, which is one of the reasons why we like polls so much.
Yes.
And you really have to wait and see how it all, shakes out in the end because people can change their mind.
Yes. Like you could have a debate and people could say, I think we might have a better chance with this one. You can never tell. But all right, yeah, I mean, it's important to watch, and to the extent that you want to give weight to the opinions of people of color who make up the bulk of the party and some of the most active voters and GOTV volunteers, etc. Well, if they're indicating a clear and combined preference, it's worth noting. And,
Joan,
yeah.
who will be on the show later, Joan McCarter, the great Joan McCarter, will be on the show later, but reminds us with a tweet. Remember who wasn't there at that big presidential forum in 2007? Who blew us off? Joe Biden.
Oh yeah? Huh.
I didn't remember, actually.
I didn't either. I didn't remember that he actually,
I remember who was there.
Yes.
You know who was there? Chris Dodd was there, my senator.
Right. Yeah, that's
and
true.
I felt obligated to spend a little bit of time with him, and I felt at the time that although he had pretty much no chance of getting the nomination any more than Mike Gravel did, Dodd clearly belonged there because he had presidential hair.
Well, little did
he
we
had
know
one
how
of the
important
great,
that hair was.
coiffs that,
Yes.
the gray, distinguished-looking gentleman from Connecticut that looked like he belonged in an advise and consent movie in black and white.
Yes, and of course now history repeating itself as farce.
Yes,
So.
but still, it was a fascinating time, and when you get together with a whole bunch of people and get their views, you find out that the liberal group is not monolithic. No group is monolithic. But yeah, I mean, all important.
Yes. Oh, well, you know what? Some of your messages have just started to come through on Skype.
Yesterday's?
No, your 9:00 batch.
Oh, isn't that cute?
So, if ending with the Mueller complained that Barr's letter did not capture context story from the Washington Post.
And then the very, very last one is a graph of Nixon versus Trump.
Yeah, those still haven't showed up.
So if they showed up, that's all I got there. But at least you're starting to see it again.
Were you
so the
sending
last
them
thing
FedEx?
I'll finish with for my segment here is Mueller asking Barr to immediately release executive summaries of his report to provide the public an accurate summary of the Trump obstruction probe. But Barr said no because he felt that would not be productive. That's a Philip Brecker story that appeared in the Washington Post last night. New York Times also covered it. Kyle Cheney from Politico, who also had a story on it, says, Remember, Rod Rosenstein said less than 3 weeks ago it was, quote, bizarre, end quote, to say Barr was misleading anyone. Mueller sent his letter a month ago.
Oh,
Rosenstein said he's being as forthcoming as he can in an interview with the Wall Street Journal. And so the notion that he's trying to mislead people, I think, is just completely bizarre, except Mueller felt he was trying to mislead people.
Well, that's
Nadler
bizarre.
all but says Barr gave false testimony to Congress.
Yes.
Jarrett Blank says the Mueller letter does not show us that Barr was dishonest. That was obvious to any reader of the redacted report. The letter shows that Mueller warned Barr. That's a letter that Mueller sent to Barr. The letter shows that Mueller warned Barr and offered him a way out. Barr consciously allowed the dishonesty to fester and compounded it in Hill testimony and a press conference.
Mm-hmm. That's because he's corrupt.
Sam Stein says, Democratic sources tell me and Aaron Banco that Mueller has indicated a willingness to testify in the Hill, but that Department of Justice is getting in the way, refusing to agree to a date. That's in the Daily Beast.
I see.
Ellie Honig says, anybody who's complained about my and others' critiques of Barr's flagrant distortion of Mueller's findings, well, see below. Mueller told the Attorney General the depiction of his findings failed to capture context, nature, and substance of probe.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Ellie says Barr can only stifle the truth for so long. Renato Mariotti says Mueller questioned Barr's characterizations of his investigation, and Barr doubled down by misleading the public at the press conference weeks later. No wonder he doesn't want a lawyer to question him when he appears before House Judiciary. Now, he'll be in front of Senate Judiciary today with a friendly Lindsey Graham leading off. He's chair of the committee. But I believe Kamala Harris is on that committee.
Yes. Is she in town?
Maybe others as well. Cory Booker on that committee. So there'll be some presidential candidates who will be asking questions, but more important than Kamala Harris being a presidential candidate, she's very sharp and a terrific questioner. So we'll see how that goes.
All right. We'll see if he enjoys himself there or decides to come back. We'll see.
Well, yeah, for the House, he's decided not to show up so far because they plan on using a attorney to question him, not House members.
And I did see somebody observe earlier today that just to sort of put things in perspective in bizarro Republican world. Here it is, Mimi Rocha saying, according to Republicans, it's harassment for staff lawyers to ask any questions of a savvy two-time attorney general, but perfectly normal to bring in an outside lawyer to question the victim of a sexual assault.
Christopher Blasey Ford.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, right, and you'll recall that they brought the special sex crimes prosecutor in to ask her questions there when it turns out that a bunch of white Republican men couldn't handle things properly and would probably say dumb stuff about legitimate rape or something like that. And, that was fine and dandy, but bringing in not even bringing in, having staff who are there normally and whispering the questions to their bosses actually just ask the questions directly. Too much for a two-time attorney general.
Right.
Very weird.
So that's my segment for today. I think that the Barr information, the Mueller letter about it, are still reverberating around Washington. It's like a big deal. This is not normal.
BFD, as Joe would say.
That is to say, as Chuck Rosenberg and others have pointed out, you mentioned Mimi Rocha, Renato Mari, all of the star prosecutors we now know by name. They get their own deck of cards. We know who they are. Joyce Vance, Mimi Rocha. These are all the analysts that we've been watching that are explaining what's going on with the Mueller report all along, point out that for Mueller to go public like this is almost unheard of. You don't write letters like that to your boss.
Right. And I don't know that the letter was...
It wasn't meant to be public.
We never know.
You don't even write a letter like that in private to your boss.
And so for somebody as protective of their... and as tight-lipped as Mueller, you have to think that he maybe did think it would eventually go public.
Possible.
If I'm going to write this down...
Well, he says he's willing to testify, so I say have him testify.
Okay.
And with that, I'll leave it there, and we'll see what other reverberations come out of all of that. But again, we got a Democratic primary, we got impeachment questions, we got obstruction on the part of the Trump administration, we have the Mueller-Barr situation with Barr actually doing hearings this week. A lot to talk about, and hopefully you and Joan will. So take care, and I will talk to you tomorrow.
Very good. Okay, thanks, Greg. It's a good start. I'm curious about Mueller's willingness to testify. He keeps saying, I'm willing, and I understand that the Justice Department can have something to say about blocking that. But it seems to me like, here I guess he's distinguishing between just talking and testifying to Congress, like, gee whiz, they've subpoenaed me, there's nothing I can do, Well, if you're willing to testify, then come do it, I guess. But they can invite them and then the DOJ can try to block it. But I think for somebody who's willing to talk, why not just surprise everybody? Why not do what the white supremacists did the other day? Show up at Bus Boys and Poets and whatever other store. Was it that, or was it Politics and Prose, the bookstore? I can't remember which bookstore it was. And even if Politics and Prose even still exists anymore, who knows? That's from like 30 years ago in Washington, D.C. But why not show up with a bullhorn and march through a restaurant or bookstore telling your story? Why wait to be invited to testify by the United States Congress? You know the DOJ is just going to get in your way anyway. Just, see if anybody is listening and writes down what you have to say. Call C-SPAN. And tell them in the morning, Robert from Washington, D.C. is on the Independence line. Go ahead, Robert, and just see what happens. I think that would make for a great show and great for ratings. They should absolutely try and do it. It would be a huge hit. Just giving you a little, TV insight from the large living orange TV guide that occupies the White House. All right, other stories, same stories. Which one should we do? Shall we talk about how taxpayers are covering liquor bills for Trump staffers? That sounds kind of interesting. We'll go back to that ProPublica story as we close out the first hour here. In April of 2017, the story begins. And I did not give the proper writing credit. The byline credit here goes to Derek Kravitz for ProPublica. In April 2017, Chinese President Xi Jinping, or Xi, I think is how I've been guided on pronunciation. Xi Jinping visited Mar-a-Lago. April 2017, President Donald Trump's Palm Beach, Florida estate and club, if you didn't know exactly what that was about, for a 2-day summit. You remember all of that. While Xi and his delegation stayed at a nearby hotel, Trump and his advisors stayed at the peach-colored waterfront resort with the orange-colored waterlogged president. That evening, I am editing this as we go along. That evening, Trump and a dozen of his closest advisors, which include 2 of his kids, I guess, right, and son-in-law, hosted Xi and the Chinese delegation in an ornate dining room. They're all ornate. The bathrooms are ornate there. It's all overdone. An ornate dining room where they ate Dover sole and New York strip steak. Those sorts of lavish, formal gatherings are expected for a major bilateral summit, which this really wasn't. But then there are less formal events. At some point later that evening, a group repaired to Mar-a-Lago's library bar. What's the library? It's where we keep the liquor, because there's no books in it. A wood-paneled study with a portrait of Trump in tennis whites. You remember that one? Titled, by the way, The Visionary. I didn't even know that was the title. Hanging nearby. That's the absurdist one where he's, like standing with one knee up and tennis sweater and everything. By the way, I've seen him actually play tennis, and that's not what he wears, and he never looked like that. But okay. The group asked the bartender to leave the room so it could speak confidentially, according to an email written by Mar-a-Lago's catering director, who all of the government should be listening to, Brooke Watson. Very interesting. So I guess that's Mar-a-Lago catering director Brooke Watson's attempt to reassure the government that everything was safe and secure, because there wasn't a bartender listening, but then there also wasn't the Secretary of State or anything like that. So here is embedded the email from Brooke Watson to D. Lilly, that D-E-E, that's the person's name, that's not their initial. And also, let's see, Beverly Van Every, which really in this small type, I'm like, this person's name is Beverly Van Everly? That's crazy. But no, just slightly less crazy. Copies to Rick Orsi and Abby Jones, whoever they are. But Brooke Watson's email address is redacted here. Let's see. Hello, D. Joe Hagan and Steve Bannon were among those in the library bar, I am told. They asked the bartender to leave so they could speak confidentially, and Secret Service did not allow the bartender to enter the room again. The group served themselves, which is why a bill was not made until later and no signature obtained. Let me know if you need anything else. Best wishes, Brooke Watson, Catering Director, Mar-a-Lago Club. Okay, so I guess that's the reason for the email. Like, what in the world are you talking about? $1,000 liquor bill. How did this happen? And she has to explain the thing. They kicked the bartender out and just took the bottles and drank them all. And it took them a while to figure out how much to charge for that. The Secret Service guarded the door, according to the email. The bartender wasn't allowed to return, and members of the group began pouring themselves drinks. No one paid. I mean, this is their fantasy, all-time Steve Bannon fantasy, that he gets to advise the president and just drink for free at the same time. 6 days later, on April 13th, Mar-a-Lago created a bill for those drinks, tallying $838 worth of alcohol, plus a 20% service charge, which is hilarious because they kicked the service out. But how do you like that? I mean, by the way, that's how serious their emoluments game is. We threw the servers out and then charged for service. It covered 54 drinks, making for an average price of $18.62 each of premium liquor, Chopin vodka, Patron and Don Julio Blanco tequilas, and Woodford Reserve bourbon. Watson's email did not specify how many people consumed the alcohol. It was just Steve Bannon and a crazy straw, I think, but or who the participants were, although it did state that she was told the participants included then strategist Steve Bannon and then Deputy Chief of Staff Joe Hagan. Bannon, who has said he stopped drinking years ago, well, you know what to make of that, said he didn't drink at Mar-a-Lago and didn't recall the episode because of how much he wasn't drinking. Hagan did not respond to requests for comment. Okay, I don't believe any of that. Then embedded is the actual bill they came up with, like a receipt. The Mar-a-Lago Club chit details is how they style this thing. Who is it getting charged to? It's member 100000, the U.S. Department of State, or as they put it here, U.S. Dept of Stat. Server, Colin got kicked out. Area, Cloister Bar, not the library bar, but the Cloister Bar. Covers, 1, that's probably not enough. Chit number, I don't know what that, I guess that's their idea of handling the billing for members there. Let's see, so they ended up putting it down as 16 tequila Patrons at $240 total, 22 Chopin vodkas, $352, 10 Don Julio Blanco tequilas at $150, that, at least the math is easy there, and 6 Woodford Reserve bourbons at $96 subtotal. This is, by the way, all rang up at, I guess they did it a couple of days later, right? So the time doesn't tell us anything. Subtotal, $838. Service charge, $167.60. Sales tax, of course, $70.40. Chit total, $1,076. And let's see, then the member charge is put down there, $1,076. And then RECIP, receipt, recip, it's not how you spell receipt, but what is that supposed to mean? Anyway, White House. And then there's minus $70.40. That's the sales tax. Are they saying that because it's charged to the White House, they don't have to pay sales tax? How do you like that? Trump doesn't even pay his sales taxes. That's pretty amazing. I guess it wasn't Trump drinking this. So they take the sales tax out. I don't know if that's a standard thing to do or what. By the way, the lines for extra gratuity, the line for extra gratuity is empty. So there was no extra tip. They didn't actually give Colin any money for having been kicked out. And that's all very interesting. So the bill was sent to the State Department, which objected to covering it. It was then forwarded to the White House, which paid the tab. The unusual cocktail hour underscores a unique push and pull in the current administration. Donald Trump's White House pays a bill, and Donald Trump's club reaps the revenue. It's unclear if the White House asked if any of those drinking would reimburse the government. The White House declined to comment because they were all drunk. The premium liquor costs are only the beginning of government spending in general at Mar-a-Lago that emerges in hundreds of pages of receipts and email correspondence between Trump Organization employees and staffers for the State Department, which oversees presidential diplomatic travel and works with the Secret Service and White House. The emails show that the president's company refused to agree to what was essentially a bulk purchase agreement with the federal government, and that it charged the maximum allowable federal rate for hotel rooms. So he jacks up the prices in addition to keeping the money. The Trump Organization could be obstinate when it came to rates for, say, function rooms at Mar-a-Lago, a problem that was eased when the president signed a law lifting the maximum micro purchase the government can make. So thanks for passing that law. The emails have been released as part of an ongoing lawsuit between the nonprofit Property of the People, a Washington-based transparency group, and the federal government, which is, of course, the most transparent ever, as Trump will tell you any day of the week. Property of the People provided the emails and receipts to ProPublica, and we, in turn, have added them to our tracker of government spending at Trump-owned properties for our interactive graphic, Paying the President, and it sounds like a good idea to keep that. The State Department is expected to release an additional 1,800 pages of records, by the way, as part of the lawsuit, which was filed under the Freedom of Information Act. In response to questions from ProPublica, the State Department asked for and received the documents described in this article. State Department officials promised a detailed response, but then declined comment. The documents reveal the intersection between Trump's conflicting interests. The emails show that Mar-a-Lago wanted to have the government money without the government rules, said Charles Tiefer, a law professor at the University of Baltimore who served on the congressionally chartered Commission on Wartime Contracting in Iraq and Afghanistan. An authority. Interesting. We'll be right back. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue with a little bit more of the crazy story of how much money Donald Trump is pocketing from out of government coffers before turning to the rest of the crazy stories of the morning. And apparently everybody is watching the president continue to melt down on Twitter in real time. So in addition to, what did we say? I saw, I think, a mention of how many retweets. Christina Wilkie was pointing out that Trump has retweeted 60 tweets in the past 18 minutes, nearly all of them in response to Joe Biden's endorsement by the firefighters. But he's now continues with his with an expanded version of his regular morning screaming about no collusion, no collusion. Let's see. House Judiciary Democrats apparently have got a hold of the letter from Special Counsel Robert Mueller to Attorney General Barr. So I think we can put that aside and take a look at it. And Michael Musson asking just a couple minutes ago that someone, really ought to be taking a close look at government to Mar-a-Lago payments. And ProPublica certainly appears to be doing something like it, but with a wider focus on, I guess, all of his various properties. Let's continue on with ProPublica's look at things here. In response to, we got Charles Tiefer, the expert who was from the congressionally chartered Commission on Wartime Contracting in Iraq and Afghanistan, taking a look at this. A few months after Trump's inauguration, the State Department proposed a contract that would pay $200,000 for all room costs for federal employees who stay at Mar-a-Lago over the first term of his presidency. But Mar-a-Lago rejected the government's proposal. I'm not going to take $200,000 in pocket flat fee. They wanted more. Mar-a-Lago rejected the government's proposal. Instead, Trump's resort bills the government the maximum permitted by federal rules. 300% of the government's per diem rate, which works out to $546 per night. Mar-a-Lago rejected the proposed flat fee arrangement, according to the emails, because of concerns the club's lawyers had, blame it on the lawyers, about the Federal Acquisition Regulation, or FAR, which governs federal purchases and is overseen by contracting officers. FAR seeks to promote competition and maintain, quote, the public's trust. So, of course, the lawyers are not having any of that. By the way, at $200,000, let's see, at $546 a night, that pays for 366.3 nights in hotel rooms at Mar-a-Lago during the first term of his presidency. Now, of course, the room isn't for Trump, and there are other federal employees, I guess, who could try and claim they have a strong reason to have to stay at Mar-a-Lago. But 366 nights, even distributed across, I don't know, a dozen aides, that's a lot. And knowing how often Trump is at Mar-a-Lago, I mean, that's part of the real problem, too, is how often he goes there. But now, with $546 being, 300% of the government's per diem rate, I guess that means that $182 a night is what the government normally would make the maximum. Although, what's the point of calling it the maximum if you're willing to pay 546%? Well, that's the government's per diem rate, which they normally pay, and the maximum that they'll pay is 300% of the per diem. Okay, and so that's what they charge. Magically, they're charging $500. So when the federal government imposes certain limits, like that's it, that's the highest amount we're going to pay, Mar-a-Lago respects that and takes that money. But, I mean, why the federal government just doesn't say, look, you're just staying, he stays there too often. $200,000 is all you're getting for hotel rooms there. Take it or leave it. Why they can't make that offer and, it's not an offer, that's just what you're getting. Because I'm sure that they'd love to charge for $547 a night, $10,000 a night if they can get it for Mar-a-Lago. But somehow the government's limitation sticks with Mar-a-Lago on that point, but not on the bulk cost contract. So anyway, normally the government would pay $182 in per diem costs for it. And so, let's see, 182. So the $200,000 that they were talking about divided by 182 would have covered over 1,000. In fact, almost 1,100 hotel nights over the first term. Remember, that's over 4 years. So they'd be paying for, they were willing to pay up front, flat fee, knowing Trump's habits. They just said, I'll tell you what, we'll pay you for 275 hotel nights a year. Flat fee up front, no questions asked. Take it or leave it. And they said, no, we think we can get away with more by charging $546 per night because, of course, we think that 275 nights is going to get racked up. Why should we take 182? Why shouldn't you? Why shouldn't the government just say, F you, that's what you're getting? I don't know. I don't know enough about how that kind of contracting works. I'll continue on here. The email suggests the Trump organization was worried that the lack of competitive bidding could run afoul of federal rules, among other concerns. That's really amazing. Okay, a State Department staffer wrote in May 2017 that Mar-a-Lago's attorneys brought up federal small business set-aside requirements, which set strict rules for sole source government bids for small businesses. The State Department staffer wrote that Mar-a-Lago's concerns are based on their general lack of knowledge on the applicability of the FAR regulations. Very interesting. So, by the way, I guess the idea that the Trump organization's lawyers say, well, we don't want to take this bulk purchasing agreement because then we could be accused of running afoul of federal competitive bidding rules. But competitive bidding rules are, of course, aimed at getting lower prices for the government. And here, the lawyers say, no, we can't take the $200,000 flat fee because then we'll be accused of jacking up prices and not entertaining competitive bidding. So instead, we'll jack up prices knowing that there's not going to be competitive bidding. There's only one provider for rooms at Mar-a-Lago, and that's the Mar-a-Lago Club. So, I mean, they got the whole thing upside down and backwards, but what do they care? They get more money out of it. All right. Mar-a-Lago and the Trump Organization, by the way, did not respond to ProPublica's requests for comment. Since Mar-a-Lago wouldn't agree to a bulk contract, the State Department had to go to Plan B. Why? When it came to the meeting with China's president, for example, the agency had to go into some contortions to make Mar-a-Lago's $546 nightly room rate square with its rules on competitive bidding, given that there are other less expensive hotels nearby. At least 16 staffers, they did stay there, stayed at the Hampton Inn in West Palm Beach. At least 8 stayed at the nearby Hilton Garden Inn, and 4 others stayed at the Tideline Ocean Resort and Spa, where the press pool also stayed, according to a hotel manifest obtained through the FOIA lawsuit. The government negotiated rates at those establishments ranged from $195, still over the per diem, to $305 per night. And maybe one of these days I should read some of these documents that are embedded here to see if we can better understand the nature of the contracting. At least 24 White House and federal staffers stayed at Mar-a-Lago during the Xi visit. They included then Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, then Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, then Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis. That's a brand new title that they've invented for the Trump administration, the then Secretary. Still Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, then, getting the picture here, then National Economic Council Advisor Gary Cohn, and other advisors past and present such as Bannon, gone, Hope Hicks, gone, Stephen Miller, still there, and Sean Spicer, gone. All right. The State Department also broke with protocol regarding taxpayer-funded travel and applied for a Citibank travel card just for Mar-a-Lago visits. Meanwhile, other problems emerged. Mar-a-Lago can't process charges over $10,000, really, which led to problems when the club split bills and charged the government card for multiple transactions, emails show. Interesting. That's surprising that they can't process charges over $10,000. You know that's got to happen for weddings and things there, right? Okay. Well, let's see. Some bullet points here following the embedding of the next set of emails talking about the problems with charging multiple receipts of $10,000 in order to make up for larger charges. Mar-a-Lago refused government requests to waive the costs of its function room for press and other official meetings in April of 2017, leading to a near violation of a $3,500 government spending cap. Last year, Trump signed a law that lifted that cap, known as the micro-purchase threshold, from $3,500 to, would you like to guess? I'm curious, audience. What do you think that they would lift the $3,500 government spending cap to? Well, if you guessed the maximum number that Mar-a-Lago can charge to a credit card, $10,000, you are correct. That's what the law of the entire United States is going to say. Now, it's how we set the government micro-purchasing spending cap at the amount that Mar-a-Lago can process on its credit card billing machines. The law does not appear to have been aimed at facilitating spending at Mar-a-Lago. Yes, it does. But it allows the club to avoid additional government contracting rules when charging sums below $10,000. How convenient. And by the way, of course, Donald Trump hinted in his campaign that, one, that he could get the best deal for everybody, and we'd be working on behalf of the government to get the best deals, except from himself, where, of course, he would pay top dollar. The maximum that Mar-a-Lago can possibly handle on its credit card machine is what we'll charge the government every time we have to charge something, all of a sudden. And wouldn't you think that Trump would have been able to say, have the Trump organization waive those fees? Oh no, we're at arm's length. He doesn't run the company anymore. I mean, has got that excuse. If we asked you to divest, he wouldn't. He just says, nothing I can do. My sons run the company and they're charging me an arm and a leg. Kids today. In one instance, the next bullet point reads, after the government was charged more than $3,500, back when that was the limit, for conference space at Mar-a-Lago, it asked the Trump organization for a 10% discount so that it wouldn't violate the micro-purchase threshold. Mar-a-Lago relented, but only after months of haggling. In the emails, the director of presidential travel support, Michael Dobbs, frequently described the creation of a charge card unique to Mar-a-Lago as a headache. Why did they do it? As Steve Schooner, a professor of government contracting law at George Washington University, put it, the fact that we have a State Department contracting officer saying this is a headache is a reminder that, but for the relationship with President Trump, this would not be a contract the government would be having. That's a problem. Many of the expenses incurred by White House staff are arranged and paid for by the White House's Office of Administration. These expenses are not required to be made public. The same goes for Secret Service spending to protect the president on such visits. The Government Accountability Office released a report last month evaluating spending at Mar-a-Lago in February and March 2017 and found that a total of $60,000 was spent at the hotel during 4 trips. The figure ran to $13.6 million when costs for plane travel, Secret Service, security, and other logistics were included. The State Department payments and its work on behalf of the White House and other traveling staff are considered public records. Between 2015 and June of 2018, at least $16.1 million has poured into Trump organization-managed and branded hotels, golf courses, and restaurants from his campaign, Republican organizations, and government agencies. Because Trump's business empire is overseen by a trust, of which he is the sole beneficiary, remember that was his version of divestment, he profits from these hotel stays, banquet hall rentals, and meals, which is exactly as we told you was the case in, as soon as the run-up to inauguration. All right, federal spending rules don't specify spending rules don't specifically address agency-level spending on alcohol that is directly invoiced to the government, as occurred with the $1,000 bar tab at Mar-a-Lago. The State Department and White House have had exemptions included in their appropriations legislation to allow for alcohol purchases. Individual government employees are not permitted to use charge cards for improper purposes. Here's Joan. Improper purposes apparently include alcohol, and federal per diem rules allow for charges for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and related tips and taxes, but specifically exclude alcoholic drinks. 6 government contracting experts said Mar-a-Lago may be violating rules requiring competitive bids, and they argue that Mar-a-Lago's practice of invoicing meeting spaces, hotel stays, and meals separately is a way to, you'll never believe it, get around federal spending rules, which of course will be brought to heel by the very tough on spending Republicans any day now. All right, well, Joan McCarter now joins us. Feel free to take any alcohol you want and bill it to the government, Joan. Just take whole bottles off the shelf of the liquor store and say it's national security.
Did you get to the part where there's a special credit card for federal employees?
I have seen this mentioned. Yes, but I'm not sure I understand
that. That can't be legal.
It's a headache. I read that part. I don't know what they meant by a headache. Like maybe, my head hurts because of how illegal this is. But It's clearly not normal, but that's not saying too much. But yeah, the whole thing. I mean, I guess we actually almost made it to the end here, so it's. I guess we got most of the.
Keep going.
Okay. Well, they do mention we got past the credit card thing here. Then we're on to the competitive bidding part of it. Mar-a-Lago, of course, doesn't want to compete, as they say. They wanted to sneak around the requirements and charge much higher prices than the competition. And we're talking again here to Mr. Tiefer, who is, I think, the GW professor on government contracting. He served as deputy general counsel with the House of Representatives for 11 years, so he's got some idea about these things. It's not the first time in history that vendors have tried to get around the rules by charging individual components. This is very familiar to every contracting officer, and it's wrong. It's not just a technicality. It's not a game. The only safeguard the public has against the Trump swallowing up all the government business is at least minimal competition. Several experts contend the State Department is exploiting loopholes in government spending rules to facilitate official gatherings at Mar-a-Lago. And it's one of the biggest fears coming true. They're bending over backwards to help the Trump organization, said Scott Amy, general counsel of the Project on Government Oversight. I'm frustrated the State Department would exploit the system to bill Uncle Sam and the taxpayers. To have the government bicker to get a 10% discount shows the Trump organization isn't putting the American public first. It's a worst-case scenario when it comes to conflicts of interest with the president and his children, putting themselves and profits ahead of the public. So that's pretty much it. That actually ends the article. They basically wait until the end to tell you, oh yeah, that's the worst case scenario. Exactly like we worried that they were going to approach the presidency as an embezzlement opportunity. And so they have. So, and in some of the most flagrant possible ways. And the government is sitting there saying, I don't know. There's nothing we can really do about it. I'm kind of puzzled as to why it is that they are able to get Mar-a-Lago to accept that the maximum that they'll pay for the hotel rooms is $546 a night, but not get them to accept, you know what, the most we're paying you, period, is $200,000. I don't understand why Mar-a-Lago can say, no, we want more. And the government says, wow, geez, all right. I can't believe that.
How could that work?
Yeah, I don't know.
Who could be making that happen?
Right, I guess so. I mean, but I don't know. I'm following illegal orders. I didn't know that it was, I don't know how you could think this was not going to happen, I guess. But what are you going to do? At this point, with Trump's rubes, it's not like you're going to be able to tell them, he said he was going to be able to save the government money, but he's not. Oh, wow, holy mackerel. That's totally different now. Nothing's going to change their mind, I guess. I thought it was very interesting that they reached the conclusion that the law that Trump signed that raised the cap on the micro purchase threshold wasn't aimed at facilitating spending at Mar-a-Lago, even though it's an interesting conclusion. Even though I guess that was my favorite part. Used to be that the government would pay no more than $3,500 on these micro purchases, but they raised it to $10,000, which also happens to be the maximum amount that the Mar-a-Lago credit card machine can handle. I mean, $10,000 is a nice round number, but
it's a micro.
Yeah, right. I mean, $5,000 would be a significant raise on $3,500. But, what number should we raise it to? How about the maximum number my credit card machine can handle? That's a good number. And where's this? How did this happen? Are all credit card machines like this? Is Mar-a-Lago cheap and they didn't want to pay the additional annual fee for a credit card machine that can handle larger charges? You would
probably
think that,
but I don't know. I don't know
how that works.
I'm not
really.
Traveling in the circles where
no,
you bump up against $10,000 as a purchase.
It's kind of amazing. You know, that you would think, certainly all the members of Mar-a-Lago would want you to think that they could drop 10 grand anytime at Mar-a-Lago if they felt like it, but they're actually all cheap. And, you know, we want you to, and Mar-a-Lago probably thinks it's being responsive to its members by paying the lower, I don't know, maybe there isn't such a structure. I only hear about how credit cards work occasionally from merchants who complain about their various merchant fees, or who say, we don't take American Express because they charge us too much. We take Visa and MasterCard, they charge us less. And I'm guessing that for credit card processing equipment and systems that charge up to $10,000 and no more, it costs you X per year, but X plus Y per year will allow you to charge $100,000 if you're a Lamborghini dealership, say, or whatever. You might want something like that. But it's certainly people who have their weddings at Mar-a-Lago are spending more than $10,000.
Oh, yeah.
How are they? I mean, they might be writing checks, but my guess is that they just charge me $10,000 however many times it takes.
Yeah.
But it's weird that so now the new government cap is, how did we get that number? It's based on how much the president wanted to embezzle at a time. Oh, that's fine. He could have, paid another $700 a year and been able to embezzle $100,000 at a time, but he didn't want to spend that money. Okay, I don't know. It seems pretty.
Well,
amazing.
there is some good news on that front.
Yeah.
Yeah, last night a federal judge denied a motion by Trump's lawyers to dismiss an emoluments claim from the House.
Well, good, because here's another one.
So that can go forward.
Good. That's nice. That is good news. Where did that come from?
That was in the Washington Post.
Okay,
it was sort of
I'll find
immediately that came out at 6 o'clock Eastern time.
Yeah, all right.
And then you know what happened immediately following that.
A complaint tweet?
No. Robert Mueller's letter.
Oh, okay.
The
drown
story
that
of
out.
that broke.
I see.
But, the judge's decision that no, he's not going to squash this emoluments claim.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I see that.
It is more
now.
Procedural, but yeah, it happened.
Okay. And so, I mean, I don't know if I guess they could have tried to distract, but all right. Well, I think the bigger story, obviously, the Mueller thing. Although then there was the next round of Glenn Greenwald and Michael Tracy out saying it proves his point again. It was really not that he lied, but rather that the press was terrible. Okay. That's an interesting thought. But it seems that now that the text of the letter is available, I guess we can decide for ourselves. Have you had a chance to read it? I have
not. Let's open it up and read it together.
Okay. All right. I've got one copy of it here. Let's see. What's the best display of it? Can I enlarge this? That might be helpful. No, I can't. I can't enlarge this one, but it doesn't look like there's that much on page 2.
This is the problem. Twitter's very handy for getting these things, except that it's really hard to read them.
Yeah, right. I think this one says, I resign. Wow, look at that. This one, the best copy I appear to have of it is this one. Dear Attorney General Barr. And, usually I like to see those things scratched out in here. Bill on it, but he didn't. I previously sent you a letter dated March 25th, 2019, that enclosed the introduction and executive summary for each volume of the special counsel's report, marked with redactions to remove any information that potentially could be protected by Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6E, that was the grand jury information one, that concerned declination decisions or that related to a charged case. We also had marked an additional 2 sentences for review and have now confirmed that these sentences can be released publicly. So again, we're back to the question of I gave you an executive summary that you could have released. You didn't need to take however long it was to come up with your 4-page summary of BS.
And presumably I gave you these things already redacted to be released.
Yeah, that's the point he's trying to make here. Let's see, we can fit in another paragraph or two, I suppose, before we cut out. But accordingly, the enclosed documents are in a form that can be released to the public consistent with legal requirements and department policies. I'm requesting that you provide these materials to Congress and authorize their public release at this time. So
at
far,
this time being March 27th.
Right.
So, the date on the letter.
Right. So, okay. So initially, and this is the second letter saying, and so, by the way, did you get the one I sent you the last time? All right. We'll get to the meat of the complaints after this. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, well, we are back now live with the Kagro in the Morning Show here with Joan McCarter. We're trying to parse through the timeline and the letter from the big bombshell letter. Doesn't really say that much, to be honest. It doesn't feel very bombshelly, but that shouldn't surprise anybody. Mueller's kind of an understated guy. He continues on, having said that I gave you an executive summary that you should have been able to release at the moment I handed you the report, but instead you froze things in place and then came up with this 4-page summary that was, by most other reports, nonsense. I don't know if he actually criticizes the 4-page summary at any point in this letter. He continues by saying, as we stated in our meeting of March 5th and reiterated to the department early in the afternoon of March 24th.
Okay, and early in the afternoon of March 24th is when Barr releases his 4-page summary.
Ah, okay. So
March 24th, the same day.
And so 3 weeks prior, almost, he says, look, they had a meeting on March 5th and told him, you're going to get an executive summary that's redacted even, and you can release it immediately as soon as you get it. And then they reminded him of it on March 24th.
Okay, so early in the afternoon on March 24th, they had the discussion.
Okay.
Reiterated to the department early in the afternoon of March 24th that the introductions and executive summaries were there. So that accurately summarized this office's work and conclusions. So late afternoon of March 24th, the summary letter the department sent to Congress and released to the public did not fully capture the context, nature, and substance. So, he knows it's going to be released on the 24th. He goes to Barr and says, here's what we've got ready for you to give to Congress today, since you appear to want to do it today. Here you go.
We'll
and then that afternoon, that's not what Barr releases.
Yeah, and instead he releases this other thing, which is, as he says, and as was quoted elsewhere, did not fully capture the context, nature, and substance of this office's work and conclusions. So that's about as mean as he gets.
And then follows up saying we communicated that concern to the department on the morning of March 25th.
Yes. Oh, right.
So he sees the 4 pages that Barr has sent on the next morning. Communicates.
Right.
We don't know how. We don't know who. If it's the royal we of Robert Mueller or who exactly. But
that's true. And so so that's in there for all the people who said, well, if Mueller disagreed with Barr's characterization, he would have said something. Well, on March 25th, he said something, and that something was, remember when I said that if you try to release something else, you'll probably just screw it up, and you should have released what we gave you because it was totally public ready. Yes. Well, you did it. You screwed it up. You didn't convey what was meant to be conveyed here. Oh, so he did say something. Well, let's ignore that and continue to say that.
And then he
did
said
not.
something again,
Yeah.
officially in writing 2 days later.
Yes, that's true too. Let's see. There's now public confusion about critical aspects of the results of our investigation. Sounds like a bad thing. By the way, not only is everyone was complaining that the report had 2 spaces after every sentence. The letter has it too.
3.
This one has 3. Yeah, that you're looking at that same line like, what is that?
Yeah.
There's way too much space in there. Just whatever. No wonder. Maybe that's it. I would have done the whole report over again.
Look at here's my copy editor. Look at the right-hand margin. They've got it fully justified.
Ah. Oh, okay.
So
yes,
that automatically puts in as many spaces as necessary to get that right edge to line up that way.
Yeah, I guess it does make it look nice and neat. But, all right. Well, let's see. So now there's public confusion about how they space these things. This threatens to undermine a central purpose for which the department appointed the special counsel. Sounds like an important thing. Which was, of course, to assure full public confidence in the outcome of the investigation. While we understand that the department is reviewing the full report to determine what is appropriate for public release, a process that our office is working on with you to complete.
Okay, let's back up, though.
Yes. All right.
There is now public confusion about critical aspects of the results of our investigation. What did Barr say the results of the investigation were? No obstruction, no collusion.
Right. You're confused.
Those would be the critical aspects.
Yes.
That Mueller is saying you got wrong.
Right. The public is confused.
Just,
It
just
would be
to reiterate
there's
that.
presidential confusion about this. Yeah. No, you've underlined the point perfectly. It's like more almost passive voice stuff that now public confusion has occurred.
Yes.
Is what has happened here. But yeah, what he's saying is you didn't use our executive summary. You made your own. And as a result, there is public confusion and an undermining of the very purpose of the appointment of the special counsel.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So...
I mean, Robert Mueller is not going to say in an official letter to Bill Barr, you lied to the public.
Right.
But that's pretty much what he's saying in this, I think.
And, I mean, if you read a little more expansively, and why not, what he's saying, is there was a public purpose for the appointment of the special counsel, and you have done something which has made it so that now that purpose is undermined. And usually when people do things like that, and we're talking about the Department of Justice wanted to do this thing, and then you did this thing so that the work of the Department of Justice came out wrong and was undermined. That's obstruction of justice.
Hey.
That's a big problem. What you did undermined public confidence in the report, undermined the very purpose of the appointment of the special counsel, resulted in public confusion, and failed to fully capture the context, nature, and substance. And that's all? Just those 3 things? Okay, that's not the problem. Of the office's work and conclusions. Okay, well, that's, a fairly serious charge. The best that Mueller is going to be able to do in a letter that he knows will become public at some point.
Right.
Let's see. So where were we? We understand that your department is reviewing the full report to determine what's appropriate for public release, the redactions, etc. And he says that they're working with them to complete those redactions. The process need not delay release of the enclosed materials. That would be the executive summary.
So
yes.
This would be the second time he's giving him this stuff that he says he prepared specifically to be released.
Did you lose it? the first time? Why are you working on your 4-page thing? Here's another copy. Release at this time would alleviate the misunderstandings that have arisen. You have a chance to unobstruct your obstruction of justice. Didn't take it. Would have alleviated the misunderstandings that have arisen somehow and would answer congressional and public questions about the nature and outcome of our investigation. It would also accord with the standard for public... And where's the rest of it?
New page.
There we are. Public... got to get down closer to this one. Release or notification to Congress cited in your letter. And then a citation to the Code of Federal Regulations, and says that may determine the public release of congressional notifications when it would be in the public interest. And I guess it would be. Signed, Robert Mueller III. Does he make a little third, make a little 3 Roman numeral at the end of his signature?
It kind of looks like it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, all right. I mean, it's in the name, so who am I to tell him not to do it?
It's his name.
You do what you want with it. Okay, so quite controversial, let's say, and I guess that's what we're all supposed to run around now, agog at Bill. I can't believe it. He's a highly respected lawyer. Ben Whitty said he had a chance. He was going to do the right thing.
Yeah.
So lots of calls for his resignation, some calls for his possible impeachment as well.
Well, he did kind of perjure himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When he told Congress, he told both the Senate and the House, oh, hey, I have no idea, and this was in April, I have no idea how Robert Mueller felt about my 4-page summary.
Yes. Well, he's an inscrutable fellow. It's very difficult to read his emotions from this matter-of-fact recitation of my obstruction of justice. I don't know how he feels. He feels I've obstructed justice, but I don't know whether that makes him sad, if that's what you're asking. No, that wasn't what I was asking. Oh. Whoops. Okay. Sorry. I take it back. He loves me.
My favorite subtweet of this whole thing last night was presidential scholar Michael Beschloss sending out the picture of John Mitchell's mugshots.
Oh, yeah, I did see those.
Reminding us that he went to jail. He went to prison for obstruction, for perjury.
And so he did. And he had some fantastic photo evidence of it as well.
Yeah.
Huh.
That was a good tweet.
All right. I want to dig that one up to share people. But I think I saw that one earlier. Whose tweet was it, by the way? It was
Beschloss. Michael Beschloss.
Okay. All right. I'll find it so that everybody can have it. Yeah. So let's see. So he is scheduled to see the Senate Judiciary Committee today. Is that right?
Barr is in fact right now testifying at the Senate Judiciary Committee.
Excellent.
I believe Lindsey Graham wanted to talk about the Hillary Clinton campaign.
Who is that again?
Yeah. And by
that's the
way,
Benghazi lady. Yes.
Lindsey Graham also announced in his opening statement that it's 400 pages, the Mueller report. Can't say I've read it all. Mm-hmm.
No, because most people who were in the
he's
biz,
just chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee.
Why would you, really, honestly?
He apparently said 3 times, I did not read the whole thing.
Okay. What did he need to know besides no collusion, no obstruction? Also, a third of it is unreadable. So, could have saved him some time.
And then moved on to say he wants to talk about that Clinton campaign.
Okay. Why?
This is all I'm getting from Twitter. I'm not watching, obviously, because I'm on with you.
Right. Oh, well, don't blame it on me. You weren't going to watch the whole thing, were you?
But Mark Sumner is live blogging it for us.
Okay. And, all right, so keep an eye on what Mark's got going on there. I don't know if I could stomach watching the whole thing.
I would rather listen to Chuck Grassley than Lindsey Graham, which is saying an awful lot.
That's pretty serious.
It's a huge step down And this is an unbelievable thing to say at the Senate Judiciary Committee from Chuck Grassley to Lindsey Graham.
Yeah. Who would have thought that would be it could take a couple of years off, and that would be an unbelievable statement.
Yeah.
Years ago, oh my God, Chuck Grassley, he's barely conscious, doesn't understand what's going on, talking about deers being hit on the side of the road. He's a weirdo. Now he's actually got more grounding in reality, barely, than Lindsey Graham has got. So, has Barr answered any questions about Hillary Clinton's campaign? Did he come prepared to actually do that, or does even he think that's crazy?
Well, he probably did talk with Lindsey about what they were going to talk about. Maybe not. I wouldn't be surprised.
I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I think I might be surprised if he actually had anything to say about it, but I will follow along with that. I guess. Is Laura taking over the live blogging now? It looks like the live blog number 2 is up on the front page, so I'll scan that later on.
She probably did the shell for it.
Oh, okay. But
and Mark will probably be doing the commentary.
Okay, fair enough. I'll check it out, I think, afterwards, just to see if there's at any point a real give and take about the Clinton campaign. I wouldn't be surprised if, even if he knew that Graham was going to ask him about it, that he didn't prepare anything. Like, I have evidence that's, although, you would think that Trump would want him to do that.
Her emails!
Right.
Yeah, I think probably that he's read up on Hillary's emails.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that the bleach bit came up, and
God.
Something. Right. Lindsey Graham relitigating Clinton email investigation at length. We're talking about bleach bit and 18 devices in a hearing whose title is the Mueller Report. So, okay. That's what he'll spend his time on. Okay, well, anything, let's see, what other, I mean, there might not be anything really on anything else on anybody's mind at this point. It's such a giant story.
Well, on my mind, of course, is Mitch McConnell, who really needs to be investigated.
Yes.
In this whole thing, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I really wish Mueller had talked to him, too.
Yeah. I'm surprised that it didn't come to that, but I don't know.
We got another reminder this morning with Trump blaming Obama for Russian interference, because not only did Obama not do anything, he didn't intend to do anything. Why didn't President Obama do something about the Russian in September, he tweeted this morning, before the November election?
I don't know.
When told by the FBI, he did nothing and had no intention of doing anything, which, of course, we all know is a big lie.
I'm curious what Trump, I mean, I don't know why I would bother trying to get a consistent answer out of him, but suppose Obama said, well, I asked Putin if he was going to interfere, and he said no. So I believed him.
Well, suppose Obama says we went to Mitch McConnell and said, look what's happening. We need to tell the American public.
Right.
And Mitch McConnell said, you do that and I'll blow up a nuclear bomb.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Would it help if Obama said that out loud? Maybe.
I think. Now I think so. I don't know what I would have thought. I mean, who knows what would have happened at the time. Obama's a very cautious guy.
At the time, they were still thinking that Hillary Clinton had it.
Yeah.
That there was no way this could happen.
So then why not do it? Because they thought
there was
a possibility
it's again
to undo it.
The caution of the Obama administration frustrating us.
Yeah.
But, at the same time, here was Merrick Garland being blockaded for the Supreme Court.
Right.
They knew Mitch McConnell was capable of doing just about anything.
Yes. And then, as you've pointed out, they were already talking about it since they thought Hillary might be a lock, where we're going to block her from making this appointment too for 4 years.
Will this poison the entirety of Hillary Clinton's president's term?
Yeah.
If we do this with Mitch McConnell now.
That's probably That could have been the thought, yes. That's the only thing that makes any sense, because, I mean, if they're standing there saying, well, Hillary's definitely going to win, so it'll all be good in the end, and she'll take care of the Russians, and nobody said, well, if Hillary's definitely going to win, then why don't we just take care of the Russians?
Yeah.
And then she'll take care of them even more after. Because if we do, then I guess it wasn't the thought that she would then lose because, well, then he'll collude with the Russians and screw up the election. But rather, they will make her presidency although again, if there was a lock to be found in all of this, it was that Republicans would be trying to make Hillary Clinton's presidency ungovernable.
Yeah, that was a given.
That should have been the lock.
We'd already seen McCain joking.
Yeah.
Don't know how much of a joke. That she would never get a Supreme Court nominee on the bench.
Yeah. And, this was the guy who, in the first day of your first term, had a, semi-secret meeting somewhere saying that his goal was to make you a one-term president. And maybe that's why you might have said, well, he failed in that and he'll fail in this too. I don't know. I suppose if you're really looking for ways to come out of that initial meeting saying, all right, we'll just wait it out. It seems very difficult to do.
I know. It's a huge frustration that the administration didn't take on McConnell at every opportunity.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
But, a huger frustration right now is that Mitch McConnell is not being scorned for what he did. That the traditional media still tends to just sort of, institutionalist.
Yeah, still a line they're willing to repeat about him.
You're seeing a little bit more people talking about just how dangerous Mitch McConnell is, but not nearly enough.
Yeah. Here, his total lack of personality helps him a great deal.
Yes,
they don't want to cover him. Let's see. Oh, meanwhile, I see...
well, while we're talking Mitch McConnell, can we just talk a little more Mitch McConnell?
Yeah, you bet. Right.
Remember how when the redacted full Mueller report did come out, he was having his re-election press conference.
Okay, yeah.
Distracting once again, Mitch McConnell being Mitch McConnell. But what was really interesting there was the big counterpiece of his re-election campaign was legislation he's going to put through to raise the legal smoking age.
Okay.
21.
I actually don't, and maybe this is the reason, I actually don't remember that he did this during the release. It was a valiant attempt to try to distract, but ultimately he's just too boring a guy for it to have worked. But you remembered factually that did happen.
Everybody is thinking, great, Mitch McConnell is going to do something positive for public health.
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
Turns out that the tobacco industry has been on a big push in all of the states to try to get smoking age increases in lieu of higher taxes, of bans on flavored vaping liquids, on all sorts of other measures the states have been looking at. Because what really will cut into their profits is all of these restrictions on vaping, and of course higher taxes.
So it was a trade. Like you can raise the smoking age. What did you want to make it 21 or something?
21, yeah.
Okay, I mean.
So here's McConnell saying, "I'm doing this great thing for public health." No, he's not doing a great thing for public health. He's doing a big old gift to the tobacco industry.
Yeah, so, okay.
Mitch McConnell never does anything good.
It's very difficult to imagine. So, I mean, I don't know if he could make that. I guess he could make that deal hold as Senate Majority Leader. You just quash any attempts to raise tobacco taxes or regulate vaping stuff.
Well, it's generally something that's been done at the state level.
Anyway. Yeah.
Imposing sales taxes.
Okay. Oh, so the question is whether state legislatures would abide by something like that.
Yeah. If you raise the federal smoking age to 21, if you say this is a federal thing, this is like the drinking age,
right,
then we're all done regulating tobacco. Nothing else has to happen at the state level.
That seems like a bad deal in a way for the tobacco people to make, because what control does McConnell have over Democratic state legislatures? Although he may not care. In Republican states, this won't happen to you.
It's a Trojan
guarantee that.
to make the public and to make legislatures and to make everyone feel like, okay, this has been done. We don't have to do any more tobacco regulation. We don't have to do anything to try to keep it out of the hands of young people, because Mitch McConnell stepped in and said, no, you have to wait until you're 21 to smoke. We're all done here.
Okay. Even though, I mean, they also make a big deal out of vaping not being smoking, so... Okay, well, you regulated the tobacco. Now we have to do something about you selling Fruity Pebbles vape juice.
Yeah.
That's not right. All right. Well, that is... Okay, we'll see if it works.
It's just Mitch McConnell being Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
He will not do anything that's purely good.
Oh. All right, so anything he does that appears like it might be a wise idea.
Isn't.
Okay, peel back a layer. Okay, I can believe that. That's simple. Easy to predict. The thought I was going to turn to was I noticed that the House Intelligence Committee apparently ready to make a criminal referral to on Eric Prince for perjuring himself before their committee.
Yes, I hadn't read that whole thing, but I just saw that in passing. Woohoo!
Yeah, I mean, that's all I'll say in passing. Everyone loves criminal referrals for Eric Prince. I don't care what it's for.
Yes.
Bad parking
Maybe they
tickets
can get his sister, too.
Yes, that would be great. Trump doesn't particularly like her, apparently. Probably wouldn't stand in the way.
Nonetheless, she's stuck around.
Yes.
It's really interesting to me. He doesn't like her.
Yeah.
She has been regularly the least popular, which is saying a lot, of his cabinet members, and yet she seems safest.
Yeah.
How's that work?
I thought the best explanation that I saw for it was she's terrible at her job, but he doesn't care about education, so what?
That's possible. Or, he's got Eric Prince.
Yeah, that helps. Maybe he just needs, I need you here so that Eric Prince will continue to do. If I fire his sister, will he get mad? Will he stop helping? I suppose that's the problem. All you have to do is
and there
continue
is
to be
an
incompetent.
awful lot of money here.
That's true. So, the deal probably for her is that you can be incompetent. I don't care. Just don't do anything embarrassing. Don't steal. If you steal, I got a problem. Then I have to decide between your money and that scandal.
Yeah.
And that's hard. Even though I'll probably decide money. But I also don't like you. I might decide to find some other money. That's our president. Operating on the highest levels.
Oh well. Boy.
So, okay. I mean, that's pretty much where we stand. We're watching the presidential candidates go through the exercise of trying to find a way of saying that they're not taking impeachment off the table or whatever else. And that's been fun.
Speaking of which, we had a pretty bad statement from Nancy Pelosi this morning on Barr.
Another? Okay.
Really weak. Really weak.
I'll have to take a look.
So, Nancy, we love you, but you got to step up a little bit here.
Yeah. I'm behind her 100% when it comes to there's this piece of legislation that needs to be shepherded through. All right. She knows how to do it. Give it to her. I won't ask any questions.
That was kind of fun, actually, to change subjects a little bit. The infrastructure meeting.
Oh, yeah.
It was sort of odd to see this happy meeting. To see Schumer and Pelosi coming out saying, this was great.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing going on in the background.
True.
I don't think anybody is counting on happening. That'll be kind of fun to watch them play.
It will be interesting, and I figured that was the sort of thing that, and I trust, that's the kind of thing I actually would trust her with, that she's coming out to make a play of some kind. And I guess she's thinking, well, we need some headlines about how we're working with the president and we're not always, after him on everything. And don't worry about it, because if there's one thing that the president has proven probably 15, 16 times that he can't sustain interest in and bring to fruition, it's Infrastructure Week. So, we'll get some headlines about, we're reasonable. We reach across the aisle when it's good for the American people to work together. And then it just happens that the president dropped the ball the 25th time. And what can you do? There's only so much we can write. Although I was interested. I was hoping somebody would come back and say, you want $2 billion for it? Me and Susan Collins say $800 million.
Well, Senator Thune just now said $2 trillion infrastructure bill will have to be paid for entirely. The Republican Senate.
Always need to pay for us. All right, thanks, Joan. We'll catch up with you next week.
From Daily Codes Radio
bye-bye.
on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
That leaves me with just enough time to make a blanket promise of awesomeness on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Yet to come, Justice Putnam will bring you up to date on, in many cases, many of the things that we were only barely able to touch on today. And so, thank God, he'll be able to pick up the ball and run with it next.